Angry guy here, and white men are turning their backs on white women and Western society. White men are turning their backs on white women and Western society. Let's just go ahead and jump into this video, guys. So, this is a passport, bro.
Annie, you're almost ready?
And
okay. No pressure. Lorraine, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I am ready. The kitchen counter does not look like it's ready because we're building new cabinets over there, so everything was taken off the old cabinets and put on the table, but that's all right. What are you doing? Taking cat food?
Yeah.
Are you hungry? I'll buy you a snack.
No.
Oh, it's not for you? Okay.
I mean, guys, so basically, here we have a man, a passport bro, who has walked away from Western society. He has a beautiful wife, a beautiful Filipina,
Beauty,
and some lovely children.
You okay? Give me a paw. No, you're busy. Okay. So, honey, just to let you know, after you slept in, your alarm on your phone is still going off. An hour later. That's good. At least it works, kind of. Not helpful, though. Lorraine, you ready?
Yeah.
Jenny, you ready?
Yeah.
Honey?
Yeah, I'm not awake.
Okay, you don't need to be awake. You're the co-pilot anyway, so. Okay.
So, guys, this is a Passport Bro channel. And here you have a man who has walked away from Western society. I believe that him and his wife actually moved to the US for a little bit. And they didn't like it. So they went back to the Philippines. And they're living in the Philippines. And I want you to look at this guy. See, I've heard his story before, and I think he's 5'10". I think he's like around 5'10", and he obviously works out. He's a really big guy, really muscular guy. But the thing is that in Western society right now, women would reject someone like him, someone with a good income, someone who is extremely physically fit, someone who still has masculinity intact. They reject that in Western society. And they no longer have. This man moved. He's walked away. He's walked away from Western society. He's walked away from Western women. He's made the choice that he's done. Black guys. But what happens when the passport Joes start leaving in mass numbers? You see, you have to understand this. The white guys were the first passport bros. They were the first guys to do this. However, when they left, they didn't tell anyone. Uncle Roger, everyone thought he was crazy when he said that he was taking off and going to go live on some island somewhere in Asia. Back it just couldn't, this was a guy who couldn't get a woman in America and all this other nonsense. No one knew that these guys were onto something. And they weren't trying to explain anything to anyone. They weren't coming back. These guys left and they didn't come back. This is what happened. They didn't say, oh my gosh, guys, there's freedom over here. Let me tell you what these white guys did is exactly like what. All right. He opened the door. He single-handedly opened the door for white rappers and then closed it back behind himself. Let's just make that really, really clear. And these white passport bros, because they're the originals, they didn't tell anybody that there was freedom over there. They left, and that was it. The only reason why so many men now know this and are seeing this is because of the black guys that were able to get off the. They were able to get off that, get off the fields, come out of the fields, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's freedom, and we're going to tell the world, and that's how this thing is becoming popular now. But like I said, The white guys were the first ones to do this, but they didn't tell anyone they were doing this. They kept this completely on the DL. They kept it on the DL. And there were also, for example, I talk about Mayumi on the channel, Mayumi, Japanese physician. You know, she lives in the U.S. and she has her husband is he was in the U.S. Navy, U.S. military when she met him, and I don't know if it was Navy, but he was in the military when she met him, and you know now they're living in the United States. And the thing is that she says he wasn't a passport bro, and he wasn't a traditional passport bro, but here's the thing: he's a part of that group of men who went, they found their woman overseas, and they didn't tell anyone. They did not tell a single soul. All right. First, the white guys did it. Then the black guys did it. But they didn't tell anyone. It's this younger generation of men now, this other generation of men that are now telling the world that, no, you can go overseas and you can find a wife overseas, and that's going to cook, clean, be fit, feminine, friendly, and offer you things that a woman in Western society just won't offer to you, because they can't offer it to you. And let's just be very clear. Women in Western society cannot offer these things to men. They don't know how to cook. They don't know how to clean. They view those things as servitude. And the honest to goodness truth, many of them are already burnt out. They wanted to be career women. Some of them are still playing this whole thing, but a lot of them are already tired. Americans are tired as a whole. They're burnt out. Americans are burnt out from working decades. And now a lot of these women who are Miss Independent, she doesn't want to work anymore. She wants a man to take care of her and give her a life of luxury. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You have a lot of these women who are 38 years old right now. And I mean, even much younger than that. Some of them are in their 20s, or early 30s. And they're all tired. They're all doing the same thing. They can't do it anymore. They can't do it anymore. They're getting to that age. They can't do it anymore. And they want a guy that's going to give them a life of luxury. And that's just not going to happen. And guys like this, man, they won't have access to this anymore. I've said this before. It's one thing when it's one thing with the black guys, but when a large group of white guys start doing the passport bro thing, when the white guys start doing the passport bro thing, that's in large numbers, guys, the economy will lose tens of billions of dollars, and then hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And when that happens, that's when they're going to start trying to make it more difficult for men to travel overseas, and putting up all these disincentives, and guys are still going to do that. They could start trying to tax these dudes. These dudes are still going to do that. The biggest problem is that men are going to refuse to create substantial amounts of wealth for the United States. Men will be on their grind, but they're not going to reinvest that money in the U.S. They'd rather be taxed at a 50% rate and then take that money overseas, what's left overseas, and spend that on their Filipina, or on their their wife in Japan, or their wife in Thailand, or in Colombia, or Brazil, or Dominican Republic, or somewhere in the Caribbean. But they would rather take the half that's left over. If the government starts taxing them heavily, they would rather take whatever is left over out of the country and go live overseas, because even half of that could still give them a good quality of life. Women can't do that. They don't have those options. And like Chris Rock said, women can't go backwards. They can only go forward. After they've had caviar, they can't go back to Burger King. Can't do it, won't do it. And that's the situation that a lot of them are in now. But with these white guys turning their backs on women in Western society, especially women of their own ethnicity, they're turning their backs on the women. They're turning their backs on Western society. This is it. This is absolutely it. Now, I use this guy as an example because this is This is a high value man. He absolutely is. He is a high value man. But Western women would not view it that way because they're all too busy chasing rappers and YouTubers, Chads and Tyrones. So they don't actually know what an actual high value man looks like. These guys that are out there in the streets, those aren't husbands. Those are not marriageable men. And they know those are not marriageable men. What they've done now is, guys, they will no longer have access to these men. I've kept on saying it. Even the men that are staying in the US that won't go overseas, they won't get into a relationship. It'll be 100% mouse utopia where the guys in the US will refuse relationships entirely. They'll just build themselves up, be on their hustle, build themselves up financially, and live relatively peaceful and carefree lives as best as they can. And not having large amounts of debt is going to really make a lot of them feel very good. Women don't realize what they've lost. That's why they're so feared. That's why a lot of them are so furious, though. That's why a lot of them are complaining and moaning and going on the way they are, even though they know better, and they keep making video after video, discussing the Asian ladies and saying that they don't speak English, they are uneducated, they're poor, and that's the reason why they want a passport, bro. And these Asian ladies keep on letting them know, putting them in check. And no matter how many times these Asian women speak to them and clap back, they just won't stop. Because what's happening is that their plan B, their backup plan is leaving. Many of you may not know this, but the economy is finally beginning to slow down. And what everyone is really waiting for is, when does the next recession hit? And when that recession hits, guys, it made a lot of people, for example, Gen Z are a group of pests. And the thing about Gen Z is that they don't have strong skill sets. They have terrible hard skills and they have terrible soft skills. What does that actually mean for them? When the economy, when people think that the economy exists only in our heads. I went to business school, and these are some of the basic things. This is the basic thing about the economy. The economy simply exists within our heads. For example, even if we have a 10% unemployment rate, sure, that's a lot of people, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. A normal unemployment rate is 5%. A healthy economy has an unemployment rate of 5%. Right now, the unemployment rate is something like 3.5%. All right, it's one of the lowest unemployment rates in history. But think about it like this: a 5% unemployment rate is normal, right? That's a good unemployment rate. If 10% of people are unemployed, that just adds 5%, and suddenly everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, things are, it's so hard out there." But really, it isn't. Sure, 10% of the population being unemployed, yeah, that's a lot of people. This is exactly what I learned in school. But think about that. That's still only 5% more than a normal unemployment rate. So what ends up happening is that people start thinking that the economy is not good, so they stop spending. And when they stop spending, that's when the economy starts to shrink. But when people think that the economy is doing well, they start spending, and that's when the economy grows. That's basically it. Okay, the economy is in the minds of people, because even if 10% of people are unemployed, 90% of people still have their jobs, and that's only a 5% increase over what a healthy economy looks like. Don't you see how crazy that is? So 90% of people still have their jobs. The economy can absorb 5%. Okay, so if 90% of people kept on spending like they didn't even care, with a 10% unemployment rate, no one would really feel it. Most people would not even feel the economic dent. It's the honest to goodness truth. In fact, if we were to shift the definition of what a healthy economy looks like, versus an unhealthy economy, and we basically said that a 10% unemployment rate is a healthy economy, and people began to believe it, that 10% unemployment rate is a healthy economy, people would keep on spending money. And then that would drive that 10% down very quickly, because a lot of people would just also just drop out of the economy entirely, and you drop out of the job market, and then that would lower the unemployment rate, because if you stop looking for work, then you're no longer considered unemployed. So boom, the unemployment rate starts to fall. These men, these guys like this man, they are gone. They are gone. And I'm telling you right now, women will not have access to these men anymore.
Be a co-pilot. Because I know how you are with directions even when you are awake. So
they won't have access to these men anymore.
I know. Poor Filipino. Beautiful morning for a drive in the Philippines.
Look at them. They're driving. This guy has a car over in the Philippines. He has his family with him. He has his beautiful wife. They're out exploring. I believe they're in Cebu right now. They're gonna buy tickets. Look at this. Guys, women will not have access to these men anymore. Okay? They won't have access to these men anymore. They're in a terribly bad position, and they don't even realize it. Look at that.
And as you can tell, another big reason why I like this port and what people do is very small.
Look at the environment around him. Look at how beautiful it is. Look at the country that he's in. Palm trees. People are very friendly, because over there he's exotic. Remember what I constantly say to you guys? Go where you are appreciated. Go where you are celebrated. All right, I just added that one on now. Someone actually said that. All right, go where you are appreciated. Go where you are celebrated. Go where you are celebrated, guys. Go where you are celebrated. Men have to wake up. You go to the other countries, they celebrate you. They celebrate you. This is why a lot of black dudes are going to Japan right now. They go to Japan. The women over there, they celebrate them because they want that culture. I made another video and I talked about it, that these Asian ladies, they're not just taking the men, they're also taking the culture. And while the Asian ladies who are, because you have to remember that this so-called white culture and black culture, there's no such thing. Everybody shares culture. Everybody shares the culture. All right. Everybody listens to the same music. Everybody's listening to Ye and all these other groups. Everybody shares the culture. All right. It's a part. Black culture is just a normal part of American culture in terms of music, television, and other style and fashion. Just as things that would be associated with white culture. Dressing. Everybody shares. It's a big melting pot. And the reason why I say that is that I want y'all to understand that just like the Japanese ladies will take their husband's culture and put out the black ladies, because when they marry black men, the Asian women marrying the white guys, they're going to take that culture as well. They're going to take their culture. They're going to go to their communities and they're going to take everything from the white women. They're going to take their houses. They're going to take their cars. They're going to take their communities. They're going to take everything from them. That whole soccer mom thing, they're going to take that from them too. All right? The whole Brady Bunch lifestyle, they're going to take it all. These Asian women are moving on in. They're moving on up to the east side. All right? These are the new Jeffersons, and y'all don't even realize it. These people are moving on up. Listen to me. You have to understand, the Asians are ambitious. These are some ambitious people. And and it seems like it's almost inevitable. We say We say don't bring the women back to the US, but inevitably some men are going to do it regardless. Because if they have a choice, if they have, basically this is their choice. They can't live overseas because some guys are just not going to be able to do it. Some guys are just not going to be able to live overseas. And they have a good woman overseas, but they're not going to be able to live over there. And flying back and forth is just not going to work for them. But at the same time, there's no way that they can have a woman in Western society. They can have a Western. They can marry a Western woman, and they're going to basically come to the conclusion that, well, I have two choices: either I stay single and alone forever. I'm definitely not going to marry someone or even date someone who is a Western woman. So my only option is going to have to be to find someone that I truly that I care for overseas, and work towards and bring her back to the US, and work towards do my best to ensure that she does not become a westernized woman. Find someone who understands this is what I expect of you, and someone who says that no, that is very firm in their own culture. And I think that over time we will see a lot of men, for example, bringing their wives, and new communities will form around that. And ultimately, you're gonna. Guys, if you think I'm wrong, look at what has happened in Sweden, where the Swedish government has been extremely furious because so many men from Sweden were bringing all of these women from Thailand, bringing their wives from Thailand. It's a massive amount. It was a massive number of guys doing this, and I read an article to you guys that went back to 20. What year did it go back to? It went back to 2013, and it was just a massive number of guys doing this back in 2013, and it's 10 years later. So it's even more pronounced now. It's even larger now. These guys bring these women back, and that's really what's going to end up happening. You're going to have a lot of these men that begin bringing their wives over in large droves. They are already doing it in Australia, where there are literally entire communities of men who have married Asian women, and they have in Australia, and they have an entire community where it's just these men and their Asian wives. There's a lot. There are pockets of them in Australia, because they've been doing it for a long time. They'll fly over to Thailand, marry a woman who's from Thailand or a woman from the Philippines, and they'll bring her back to Australia. And they have churches over there and everything. And they have entire communities that are literally just these men, essentially just white guys, their Asian wives, white guys and their Asian wives. And that's it. And that's going to start happening in America. That's going to start happening in the UK. Right? You can see it's happening in Australia. It's been happening for a long time. It's happening in Sweden. It's been happening for a long time, and that's what's going to start happening in other Western countries as well. And these women, they will not have access to these men anymore. Guys like him, they won't have access to him anymore. Guys, 10 years from now, it's not going to take 10 years, but what I'm telling you is that 10 years from now, we are going to be at a place where the Western world, where the world will look at the conditions that Western women are living in, especially in the United States, and they are going to say, how did things get this bad for these women? And these women are going to be crying on social media. And by then, social media will, of course, it'll be like the grandpa thing. It's already getting long in the tooth. But that's all they're going to be doing. They're going to be on social media, wrapped on social media, crying their eyes out about how lonely they are, how, and basically essentially spinster life, showing off their spinster life of being single. And it's going to be harsh. And their mental health is going to be a whole other conversation. And people are going to say, how did this end up happening to these women? And they're going to be looking at the men, and men will always do what men will always do what they have to do to survive. So the guys are going to have all these foreign wives. I've warned you about this. I said that right now, men going overseas and finding a foreign wife is becoming a trend. But trends become normalities, and normalities become traditions. And in 10 years, we're going to be heading towards a place where it's going to start to look, it's going to increasingly become a tradition for a man to go overseas and get himself a wife. It will be a normality. In 10 years, it will be a complete normality. All right? It will be a normality in 10 years. And at that point, we'll be moving towards tradition. Okay? Right now, we're in the trend phase. In 10 years, we'll be in the normality phase. All right? And it will, and not only will we be in the normality phase, but then we'll be transitioning to the traditional phase, where this is the only way that guys will do it. In 20 years, it will be a tradition. 20 years, in 20 years, it will be a tradition for men to go overseas and find a wife and date exclusively overseas. Because that's basically that's a full generation. In one generation, men will have completely walked away from Western society and relationships in Western society. In one generation from now, it will be a tradition. And that will be the end of it. And people will look at women in Western society and wonder, they'll look at women in Western society and wonder, how could something of this like this have happened? And women in Western society have ended up in this just extraordinarily poor state. And there's not going to be anyone coming to rescue them either. And it's basically, they made their bed and they're going to have to lay in the bed that they made for themselves. And like I said, like, you know, the black women that are watching these passport bros leave, they won't have access to those black men anymore. They don't have access to those men anymore. And that's why they're doing a lot of this shaming, because they want to stop other men from doing this. Once the white guys leave, the white women, they won't have access to these men anymore. But not only just the white women, Western society won't have access to these men anymore. Like I said, these guys are going to be taking tens of billions and then eventually hundreds of billions of dollars out of the country every single year and bringing it overseas and creating new economies and new communities overseas. And even no matter everything that you try to do to prevent them from going won't stop them. If you try to tax them heavily and take half their money, if they go overseas, they'll still take the half that's left and spend that overseas and live a happy and comfortable life. If he's making $50,000 a year, you tax him at 50%, and all he has is 20 grand left after taxes. He will save his money as hard as he can, and then he will take that money and go overseas with it, because he will do more with less. You can't stop these guys. The only thing they can do is just put new travel restrictions, which is where I do believe the world is headed, where they're going to make it much more difficult to travel and leave your country. But even then, if these men are forced to stay in Western society, they're not going to be contributing to the economy. They're all dropping out of the economy. And trying to force men to work, that's not going to happen either. We are truly at the end right now. We're truly at the end. I want to know your thoughts on what we said here in this video. If you agree with me that we are literally heading into a new era, into a new age, and 10 years from now, people will look at the condition that women are in Western society and ask, how did they end up in this truly poor and awful condition? And of course, it's going to be the aftermath of feminism. The aftermath of saying that, well, you should believe everything that they tell, everything that she says. Don't ask questions, simply believe. And we're going to be in the aftermath of this, of men basically who threw up their hands and said enough is enough. No, I'm not going to end up, in family court and having all my wealth and resources extracted. No, I'm not going to end up in divorce court having all my wealth and resources extracted. No, I'm not going to end up in criminal court, or civil court having all my wealth and resources extracted. No, I'm not going to end up in criminal court having everything I've built in life taken away from me. I'm not, including my reputation. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to walk away. We don't need to call it going your own way. It's not going your own way. It's walking away. It's walking away. These men are not simply going their own way. They are walking away from Western society and relationships in Western society. That's what we are. That's what we are experiencing. And it's only going to accelerate. And I personally am all for it. I absolutely am. I'm loving it. And I enjoy seeing it happening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and we'll talk about it there. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA. Been walking away, and cheers.